I moved to Ashford Ridge on a Tuesday in late September, and looking back now, I should have known something was wrong the moment I saw how empty the streets were at night. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you what happened, and believe me, you need to hear this, I want you to do something for me. If you've ever lived somewhere that felt wrong, somewhere that had rules nobody would explain, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Because after what I experienced, I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if this story keeps you up tonight like it still keeps me up, hit that subscribe button. You'll want to be here for what comes next. My name is Alex, and I was 28 when I left the city. 28, and burned out from a marketing job that had consumed 5 years of my life, leaving me with nothing but anxiety medication and the hollow feeling that I'd wasted my 20s staring at spreadsheets. When my lease ended and my relationship crumbled in the same devastating week, I decided I needed space. Quiet. Somewhere, I could hear myself think. Ashford Ridge seemed perfect in the listing photos. A small town tucked into the Appalachian foothills, population 847, with Victorian houses and brick storefronts that looked like they'd been frozen in 1892. The rent was impossibly cheap for a 2-bedroom house with original hardwood floors. Character property, the landlord had called it on the phone. Needs someone who appreciates history. I appreciated history. I appreciated cheap rent even more. The drive took 6 hours through increasingly winding roads, each mile marker seeming to take me further from civilization. My phone lost signal somewhere past the last gas station, and by the time I reached Ashford Ridge, the sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows that made the town look like it was sinking into the earth. The house was on Millbrook Street, third from the corner. It was a narrow, 2-story structure with peeling blue paint and a wraparound porch that sagged slightly on one side. The windows were old, real old, with wavy glass that distorted reflections. When I stepped inside, the floorboards groaned under my weight, and I caught the smell of old wood, dust, and something faintly metallic that I couldn't place. But it was mine. It was quiet. It was exactly what I needed. The first week passed in a blur of unpacking and settling in. I met a few neighbors, mostly elderly folks who offered polite nods but didn't linger for conversation. Mrs. Henley next door brought me a casserole on my 3rd day, setting it on the porch with a tight smile. "Welcome to Ashford Ridge," she'd said, her hands clasped in front of her floral dress. "We keep to ourselves mostly, but we're good people here." "Good people, thank you," I'd replied, taking the warm dish. "I'm looking forward to the quiet." Something flickered across her face. Was it concern? Pity? "Yes," she said slowly. "It's very quiet here, especially at night." She glanced at the sky, where the sun was beginning its descent. "You'll want to keep your doors locked after dark. Always." Before I could ask why, she'd hurried back to her own house, moving faster than I'd have expected from a woman in her 70s. I chalked it up to small-town paranoia. Old people worried about crime even when there wasn't any. But that night, I noticed it. The silence. I'd expected crickets, maybe the distant sound of cars or a dog barking. Instead, there was nothing. Absolute, suffocating silence that pressed against my eardrums like water pressure. I stood at my bedroom window around 11 p.m., looking out at Millbrook Street, and realized I couldn't see a single light in any of the houses. Not one. The street lamps cast weak yellow pools every 50 feet, illuminating empty sidewalks and parked cars. No movement. No life. It was as if the entire town had been evacuated. I told myself people here just went to bed early, rural lifestyle and all that. But deep down, even then, I knew it felt wrong. Over the next 2 weeks, I began to understand Ashford Ridge's peculiar rhythm. The town itself was beautiful in a faded, melancholic way. Main Street featured a row of brick buildings with ornate cornices and hand-painted signs that creaked in the wind. There was Fletcher's General Store, where I bought groceries from a man who barely spoke. The Copper Bell Tavern, which served surprisingly good burgers and beer. A small library with stained glass windows. An old stone church with a bell tower that seemed to watch over everything. The people were polite but distant. They'd nod, exchange pleasantries about the weather, but conversations never went deeper. Whenever I tried to ask about the town's history or local events, They'd find excuses to end the discussion. "Not much happens here," they'd say, almost rehearsed. That's how we like it. But I started noticing patterns. Every few weeks, something would change. It was subtle at first, the general store closing an hour earlier than usual, bars on the library windows that hadn't been there before, the way people would glance at the sky with expressions that bordered on dread. I met Henry Pritchard at the Copper Bell one evening. He was the bartender, a man in his 50s with graying hair and forearms covered in faded tattoos. Unlike the others, he seemed willing to talk, at least after a few beers had loosened his tongue. "You settling in all right?" he asked, wiping down the bar with a cloth that had seen better days. "Yeah, I think so. It's definitely different from the city. I bet." He poured himself a whiskey, which seemed like something bartenders only did in movies, but here was Henry doing it anyway. "You picked an interesting time to move here. Why's that?" He studied me for a moment, his weathered face unreadable. Then, he downed the whiskey in one gulp. "You notice anything strange yet?" My heart quickened. "Like what?" "Like how quiet it gets at night. Like how everybody seems to disappear after sundown." "I have noticed that, actually." "Is there a reason?" Henry leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Let me give you some advice, friend. When the full moon comes, and it's coming soon, you stay inside. Lock your doors. Close your curtains. Don't look out the windows, and for God's sake, don't go outside, no matter what you hear." "Why? What happens during the full moon?" He straightened up, suddenly shutting down. "Nothing happens. Nothing at all. That's the point." He moved to the other end of the bar, serving another customer, and wouldn't meet my eyes for the rest of the evening. I left the Copper Bell as dusk approached, and that's when I saw them boarding up windows. Fletcher's general store had wooden shutters being pulled across the front windows by Mr. Fletcher himself. Across the street, the post office was doing the same. As I walked back toward Millbrook Street, I counted 6 buildings being sealed up, like they were preparing for a hurricane, but the sky was clear. No storm warnings. Just a pale afternoon sun sinking toward the mountains. Back home, I pulled out my laptop and searched for information about Ashford Ridge. Cell service was spotty, but I'd set up internet through a local provider. What I found was sparse, a few historical society pages, census data showing the population had remained almost exactly the same for 100 years, and mentions of traditional practices that were never explained. But then I found something else. Missing persons reports, dozens of them, dating back decades. Most were from the county sheriff's office, documented on a regional news site. The victims were almost always outsiders, tourists, hitchhikers, people passing through. The reports described them as last seen in or near Ashford Ridge, but investigations yielded nothing. No bodies, no evidence, just vanished. The dates meant nothing to me at first, random days scattered across years. But then, I noticed something. I cross-referenced them with a lunar calendar I found online, and my blood went cold. Every single disappearance occurred during a full moon. Every single one. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling. This was insane. Coincidence. It had to be coincidence. But Henry's words echoed in my mind. When the full moon comes, you stay inside. I checked the lunar calendar again. The next full moon was in 4 days. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me jump. The wind rattled the windows, and I kept imagining I heard footsteps on the porch. Around 3 a.m., I got up for water and made the mistake of looking out the kitchen window. The street was empty, as always. But across the way, I saw my neighbor, Mr. Henley, standing in his yard, perfectly still, staring up at the sky where the moon hung gibbous and swollen. He was in his pajamas, his face pale in the moonlight, and he didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I watched him for 10 minutes, my own breath fogging the glass. He never moved. When I finally went back to bed, I couldn't shake the image from my mind. The change began 2 days before the full moon. I woke up that morning to find the entire town transformed. Every shop on Main Street had thick wooden boards across the windows. The library was completely shuttered. Even the church doors were chained shut. At Fletcher's general store, I found Mr. Fletcher loading the last of his supplies into a back room. "Are you closing?" I asked, bewildered. He didn't look at me. "For a few days. Storm coming. There's no storm in the forecast. There's always a storm. He finally met my eyes, and I saw something there. Fear. Deep and primal. You should get your supplies now. Get home before dark. Don't come out until Monday. It's Friday. You're saying, I'm saying don't come out until Monday. He handed me my bags with shaking hands. Please. I left with 3 days worth of food, my mind racing. This wasn't normal. This was coordinated, ritualistic. The entire town was preparing for something, and nobody would tell me what. That afternoon, I tried calling my sister back in the city, but my phone had no signal, not even 1 bar. The internet was dead too. It was like Ashford Ridge had been cut off from the outside world. By 5 p.m., the sun was setting, and I watched from my porch as the town executed its shutdown with military precision. At exactly 5:47, the church bell rang once, a single deep toll that resonated through the valley. Within minutes, lights started going out. House by house, the town went dark. I saw Mrs. Henley pulling heavy curtains across her windows. Across the street, someone was hammering boards over a basement window. Dogs started barking, dozens of them, all at once, a chorus of animal panic that raised goosebumps on my arms. Then, as suddenly as it started, the barking stopped. Silence fell like a guillotine blade. I stood on my porch, the last person outside, watching the darkness swallow Ashford Ridge. Not a single light shone from any window. The street lamps buzzed and flickered but stayed lit, creating isolated pools of yellow light in an ocean of black. A voice startled me. Get inside. I spun to find Mr. Henley standing at the edge of my property, barely visible in the gloom. What? Get inside. Now. Lock your doors. All of them. Don't open them for anyone. His voice was urgent, almost pleading. Mr. Henley, what's happening? What is everyone afraid of? He grabbed my arm the first time anyone in this town had touched me. His grip was iron strong, desperate. Tonight and tomorrow night. The moon is nearly full. Don't try to be brave. Don't try to investigate. Just survive the next 2 nights, and you'll understand why we live the way we do. Survive? My voice cracked. What's out there? But he was already retreating to his house, moving fast, glancing over his shoulder at the darkening street. I watched him disappear inside, heard 3 separate locks engage. I looked out at Millbrook Street. Empty. Silent. The last rays of sunlight were fading behind the mountains, and something in my lizard brain was screaming at me to run inside. So I did. I locked the front door, the back door, checked every window, drew all the curtains, turned off the lights because something told me I needed to be invisible. Then I sat in my living room, in the dark, and I waited. An hour passed. Nothing. 2 hours. Still nothing. Around 10 p.m., I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps on the asphalt outside. Not the sharp click of shoes. Something else. Something that made a wet, dragging sound between steps, like someone pulling a wounded leg. I crept to the window, careful not to disturb the curtain, and peeked through a tiny gap. The street was thick with fog, impossible fog, rolling down from nowhere, turning the street lamps into fuzzy orbs. The temperature had dropped. I could see my breath inside my own house. The footsteps continued. Slow, patient, getting closer, and then I saw it. At the edge of the nearest streetlight, something moved through the fog. Something tall, too tall to be a person, maybe 7 feet at least. Its silhouette was wrong. The proportions were all off. The legs bent backward at the knee, like a dog's hind legs, but the torso was human-shaped. The arms were too long, hanging down past where knees should be. As it moved through the pool of light, I caught glimpses of details that made my stomach clench. Dark, matted fur or hair covering parts of its body. Skin that looked pale and stretched in other places. Its head was lowered, face pointed toward the ground, but I could see its eyes, reflective eyes that caught the streetlight and threw it back in an amber glow. It was sniffing the ground, hunting. The creature moved with unsettling purpose, following some scent or trail I couldn't detect. It passed within 20 feet of my house, and I could hear it now, a low, wet breathing, accompanied by that clicking sound I'd heard the first night. Click, 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 rhythmic, like someone snapping their tongue against their teeth. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making any sound. The creature stopped directly in front of my house. Its head lifted, and for one horrifying moment, I thought it was looking right at me. Its face was a nightmare fusion of human and animal. The skull structure was elongated, the jaw too wide, filled with teeth that were too sharp and too many. But the eyes had intelligence, awareness. It tilted its head, considering my house, and I swear I saw its nostrils flare. Then it moved on, continuing down the street until the fog swallowed it completely. I didn't move from that window for 3 more hours. Didn't breathe properly. Didn't dare make a sound. But I saw it pass by twice more that night, always following the same route, always stopping at the one broken streetlight halfway down the block, a light that had been out since I arrived. When dawn finally came, the fog lifted as suddenly as it had appeared. The street looked normal again, peaceful, like nothing had happened. But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew why the town shut down on full moons. I didn't leave my house all day Saturday. I couldn't. My body was locked in survival mode, every muscle tensed, every nerve firing. I'd pulled a kitchen chair to the window and sat there watching the street, waiting for anyone to emerge and confirm I wasn't losing my mind. Nobody came out. The town remained sealed, silent, dead. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, the only sign of life. Even the birds seemed to have fled. I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Sleep deprivation, stress from the move, maybe some kind of hallucination brought on by the isolation. But my hands still shook when I thought about those reflective eyes, that wet clicking sound. Around noon, I heard something at my back door. 3 slow knocks. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth with cold cereal. 3 more knocks, deliberate and patient. I crept toward the kitchen, my heart hammering. Through the small window in the back door, I could see someone standing there. Someone, human-shaped at least. They knocked again. "Hello?" My voice sounded strange, high-pitched. "Who's there?" No answer. Just another knock. I looked through the window's edge and saw Mrs. Henley standing on my back porch. She was staring straight ahead, not at the door, but through it, her face expressionless. "Mrs. Henley?" She knocked again, the same 3 slow raps. Her eyes didn't blink, her mouth didn't move. "Mrs. Henley, are you okay?" 3 knocks. Something was very wrong. This wasn't normal behavior. I backed away from the door, my skin crawling, and she just stood there, knocking every 30 seconds with mechanical precision. This went on for 20 minutes. Then she turned and walked away, her movements stiff and unnatural, disappearing around the side of the house. I ran to the front window and watched her cross the street, walking straight back to her own home. Mr. Henley opened the door for her, his face grim, and they both went inside. Had that really been Mrs. Henley? Or something pretending to be her? The day dragged on with agonizing slowness. I kept checking my phone. Still no signal. The internet was still dead. I was completely cut off. As evening approached, I went through the house again, checking every lock, every window. I'd learned my lesson. Whatever came tonight, I wasn't going to see it. I closed all the curtains tight, turned off every light, and sat in the pitch-black living room with a kitchen knife in my hand. Stupid, maybe. What good would a knife do against what I'd seen? But it made me feel slightly less helpless. The church bell rang at 5:47 again, one deep toll that seemed to vibrate in my chest. Then came the silence. I sat in the dark and waited. The footsteps started earlier tonight, around 9 p.m. That same wet, dragging sound, accompanied by the clicking. But tonight, there were more of them. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving in different patterns, crisscrossing the street. How many were out there? I heard scratching at my front door. Long, slow scratches, like nails or claws dragging down the wood, testing it. The doorknob rattled, turned one way then the other, but the lock held. The scratching moved to the window beside the door. I could hear it right through the curtain, inches from where I sat. Scratch, 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 methodical, patient. Then a voice, Alex, my name, spoken in a wet, distorted version of my mother's voice. "Alex, sweetie, open the door." I clamped both hands over my mouth, tears streaming down my face. My mother had died 3 years ago. Cancer. This thing, whatever it was, had pulled her voice from my memories and was using it against me. Alex, I'm scared out here. Please let me in. Please, baby. The doorknob rattled violently. Alex, it hurts. It hurts so much. Help me. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed for it to stop. Alex. The voice changed, became something else, something angry and inhuman, a shriek that made the windows rattle. Then the scratching started again, more violent now, long gouges being carved into my door. This continued for what felt like hours. The thing outside cycled through voices, my mother, my ex-girlfriend, my sister, even my own voice calling out for help. Each one perfect, each one designed to manipulate me into opening the door. I didn't. But then the scratching stopped. The silence was worse. I sat there in the dark, knife trembling in my hand, and listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no clicking, no voices. Had it left? Then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Scratching. On the second floor. Something was on my roof. I looked up at the ceiling, following the sound as it moved from above the living room to above the hallway. Slow, deliberate scratching, like it was looking for a way in. It found one. The sound stopped over the bathroom. For a moment, there was nothing. Then I heard the skylight window in my bathroom, a window I'd completely forgotten about, crack open with a soft click. Something was inside my house. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that chair with my knife, listening to the creature move around upstairs. It walked through the room slowly, deliberately, pausing every few minutes. I heard furniture being moved, closet doors opening, the soft pad of feet or paws, or whatever it had on the hardwood floors. It was searching. Around 4 a.m., I heard it descend the stairs, step by step, taking its time, each footfall making the old wood creak. I could picture it in my mind, that too tall silhouette, those bent backward legs, those intelligent, hungry eyes. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. It was in the hallway now, just around the corner from where I sat frozen in the living room. I heard it sniffing, long, wet inhales, followed by that clicking sound. It knew I was here. Time stretched. My heart was beating so hard I was sure it could hear it. The knife was slick in my sweaty palm. If it came around that corner, I would fight. I would die fighting. But it didn't. After an eternity, the footsteps moved toward the back of the house. I heard the back door open, the deadbolt somehow unlocked from the inside, and then the creature was outside again. The door swung shut on its own. I sat there as the sun rose, too terrified to move, too exhausted to process what had happened. When full daylight finally streamed through gaps in the curtains, I stood on shaking legs and checked the house. Upstairs, my bathroom skylight was open. The room smelled like wet fur and that metallic scent I'd noticed when I first moved in. Scratches marked the floor and walls, deep gouges in the wood that would cost hundreds to repair. My bedroom looked like someone had searched it. Drawers were slightly open, clothes disturbed, but nothing was missing. In the second bedroom, papers from my desk were scattered across the floor, as if something had pawed through them. What had it been looking for? Downstairs, I found scratches on the inside of the back door. The deadbolt had scratches around it too, like something had carefully learned to unlock it. The front door was worse. The outside was shredded long parallel gouges that had carved through 3 layers of paint down to bare wood. If the door hadn't been solid oak, it would have broken through. I wanted to run, to get in my car and drive until Ashford Ridge was just a nightmare in my rearview mirror. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the journalist in me, the person who'd once dreamed of investigative reporting before settling for corporate marketing. Maybe it was stubbornness, or stupidity, or the simple fact that I had nowhere else to go. I needed answers. Around 10 a.m., I heard movement outside. Looking through the window, I saw people emerging from their houses, like survivors from bomb shelters. They moved cautiously at first, checking the street. Then, with increasing confidence as the daylight confirmed the danger had passed, shops started opening. The boards came down. Life resumed its normal rhythm. I went outside, my legs weak, and found Mr. Henley in his yard. "Mr. Henley," I called out, "we need to talk." He looked at me, and I saw relief in his eyes that I was alive. "You survived. No thanks to anyone's help. What the hell is going on in this town?" He glanced around, checking who might be listening, then gestured for me to follow him to the side of his house, out of sight from the street. "I tried to warn you," he said quietly. You gave me cryptic bullshit. I deserve real answers. What was that thing? Things. Plural. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. They've been here longer than the town. Longer than the country. This land. Something happened here a long time ago. Something bad. I need more than that. He took a long drag. In 1823, there was a settlement here. Different name, different people. During a full moon in September, something came down from the mountains, killed 40 people in one night, slaughtered them like animals. I felt sick. What was it? Nobody knows. The survivors called them different things. Demons, monsters, curses made flesh. But they're real, they're old, and they're hungry. Why doesn't anyone leave? Why do you stay? Because they don't let us. He met my eyes. People who try to leave during the full moon never make it. The road out of the valley, things happen. Cars go off cliffs. People disappear. And if you leave any other time, the thing is that eventually, people forget. Forget why they left. Forget the danger. Something pulls them back. That's insane. Is it? You saw it. You survived 2 nights. Most newcomers don't make it past the first. How do you survive? How has this town survived? We follow the rules. We hide. We stay quiet. We don't fight because you can't win. Once a month, we give them the night, and they mostly leave us alone. He flicked ash onto the ground. Mostly. Mostly. Sometimes they take someone anyway. Someone who breaks the rules, or who's just unlucky, or who they've marked for some reason. He looked at me meaningfully. You should be careful. It came inside your house, didn't it? My throat tightened. How did you know? Because I heard it. We all heard it. It was interested in you. That's not good. What do I do? You survive until the next full moon. Then you survive that one, and the next. That's all any of us can do. He started walking back toward his house. There's a town meeting tomorrow night at the church. You should come. Learn the rules properly. Because you're one of us now, whether you like it or not. He left me standing there, my mind reeling. I spent the rest of the day researching in the library, which had reopened. The librarian, a thin woman named Miss Carlyle, watched me with nervous eyes as I pulled old newspapers and town records. The history Henry had mentioned was documented, though sanitized. The 1823 incident was recorded as an outbreak of violence that claimed 42 lives. No mention of what caused it, but I found other records. Disappearances every month, going back decades. Sometimes tourists, sometimes drifters, sometimes people like me who'd moved to town without knowing its secret. I also found a journal in the historical archives, catalogued but clearly unread for years. It was written by a man named Thomas Eldridge, dated 1889. The final entry read, "The moon waxes full again, and I fear this shall be my last entry. The creature has marked me I know not how, but I see it watching my house even in daylight hours, standing at the forest edge. It knows where I live. It knows my scent. Tonight when darkness falls it will come for me, and no locks will stop it. To whoever finds this, do not stay in Ashford Ridge. The price of peace here is too high. Some nights, when I hear them calling to each other in the woods, I think there are hundreds of them, maybe thousands, an army of nightmares waiting for their one night of freedom. We are not a town. We are livestock." And the entry ended mid-sentence. Thomas Eldridge was listed as missing in October 1889. I closed the journal, my hands trembling. The church basement was packed when I arrived Sunday evening. Nearly the entire town had turned out, about 200 people crammed into folding chairs, the air thick with body heat and nervous energy. I recognized faces from around town: Mr. Fletcher from the general store, Henry from the tavern, Miss Carlyle from the library. They all nodded at me with expressions I now understood: welcome to the club, welcome to hell. An elderly man stood at the front, leaning on a cane carved with strange symbols. This was Walter Morrison, I'd learn later, the unofficial leader of Ashford Ridge at 93 years old. He'd lived here his entire life, survived 70-plus full moons. "Before we begin," Walter said, his voice surprisingly strong, "I want to acknowledge our newest resident, Alex. Stand up, please." Heat flooded my face as I stood. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Alex survived their first full moon, Walter continued. That's an accomplishment. Many don't make it. A few people nodded solemnly. But survival requires knowledge, and we've been remiss in sharing that knowledge. That ends tonight. I sat down as Walter began to speak. The creatures have rules, he said. They don't break these rules, and neither can we if we want to live. First, they only hunt during the full moon, from dusk till dawn. 3 nights per cycle, sometimes only 2 if the moon rises and sets at odd hours. Outside those nights, they stay in the deep woods. We don't see them, and they don't bother us. Second, they cannot enter a locked building without invitation. But they're clever. They'll mimic voices, scratch at doors, create reasons for you to open up. Never do. No matter what you hear, no matter who they sound like, the door stays locked. Third, they hate silver. It burns them. Many of us keep silver objects near entrances, coins, jewelry, utensils. It won't kill them, but it makes them hesitate. Fourth, never make eye contact. If you see one, look away, look down. Eye contact is interpreted as a challenge, and you will lose that challenge. He paused, letting that sink in. Fifth, the mark. Sometimes, rarely, a creature will mark someone for hunting. We don't know how or why they choose. But once you're marked, they'll focus on you. They'll come to your house every full moon. They'll test every entry point. They'll try everything to get inside. My stomach dropped. How do you know if you're marked? Walter looked at me with profound sadness. They'll leave a sign, usually scratched into something near your home. A symbol from their old language looks like 3 parallel lines crossed by a single curved line. Did they enter your house during the full moon? Yes, I whispered. Through a skylight, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then check your property when you get home, if you find the mark. He trailed off. What? What happens if I'm marked? A woman in the front row turned around, late 40s, with tired eyes. My husband was marked 4 years ago. They took him on the 3rd full moon. Found pieces of him in the woods after. The room fell silent. I'm sorry, Walter said to me. But you need to know. If you're marked, your chances drop significantly. Some survive for years. Others, he didn't finish. There has to be something I can do. Something beyond hiding. Walter shook his head. We've tried everything. Weapons don't work, bullets pass through them like they're made of smoke. Fire doesn't catch on their skin. Groups of people working together have tried to fight back. It never ends well. Our only advantage is that they honor their rules. As long as we stay inside, as long as we don't engage, most of us survive. But not all. No, not all. The meeting continued for another hour, covering practical details: which buildings were safest, how to reinforce doors, the schedule for the town's emergency alert system, that church bell. I'd heard, but I barely listened. I was thinking about the mark, about Thomas Eldridge, about that woman's husband torn apart in the woods. When the meeting ended, people filed out quietly. A few approached me, offering condolences like I'd already died. Henry clapped me on the shoulder. Check your property tonight, he said. If there's no mark, you might be okay. They might have just been curious. And if there is a mark, then you learn to live carefully. I walked home under the waning moon, still bright enough to cast shadows, but no longer full. The streets were busy with people returning to normal life, but I felt like I was walking through a different world, one where I was already dead and just hadn't gotten the message yet. Back at my house, I searched for the mark with a flashlight. I found it scratched into the wood of my back porch, right next to where the creature had unlocked the door. 3 parallel lines, crossed by a single curve, carved deep enough that I could feel the grooves with my fingers. I was marked. I wish I could tell you I handled the news with courage and dignity. I didn't. I spent the first week after discovering the mark in a fugue state, barely eating, barely sleeping. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound outside made me jump. I kept the lights on constantly, burned through my savings installing additional locks and reinforcing windows. The townspeople tried to help. Mrs. Henley brought food. Henry checked on me every few days. Mr. Fletcher let me buy supplies on credit when my money got tight. They'd all lost people to the creatures. But understanding doesn't change reality. I became obsessed with research. The library became my second home, and Miss Carlyle gave me access to the restricted archives documents the town kept hidden from casual visitors. I found records of others who'd been marked. 17 people in the last 100 years. Only 3 survived past the 5th full moon. One of those 3, a woman named Sarah Chen, had lived until the 13th cycle before vanishing without a trace. The historical accounts were brutal in their honesty. Descriptions of bodies found, or more often, parts of bodies. The creatures didn't just kill, they consumed. They took their time. But I also found something else. Buried in a leather journal from 1847, written by a surveyor named Jonathan Pike, was a passage that made my heart race. The old woman in the woods told me the creatures were once human, cursed by something older than memory. They are bound to this valley by ancient magic, trapped between forms. They can be bargained with, she said, but the price is always steep. She warned me never to seek them out, never to try to speak with them. They will pretend to understand you, she said, but they only understand hunger, bargained with. The words echoed in my mind. What if there was a way out? What if I didn't have to just hide and wait to die? I spent hours walking the edges of the forest during daylight, looking for, I didn't know what. Signs, clues, the old woman Jonathan Pike had mentioned, though she'd be dead 200 years by now. What I found instead were bones. Deer bones mostly, picked clean and arranged in circular patterns, but also human bones, femurs, skulls, ribs scattered among the trees like discarded toys. Some were old, weathered gray, others looked recent, and I found more marks. The 3-line symbol carved into trees deep in the forest, some so old they'd grown around the carvings. Territorial markers, maybe. Or warnings. One afternoon, 3 weeks after that first full moon, I found something that changed everything. It was a clearing about half a mile into the woods, perfectly circular, about 30 feet across. The ground was bare earth, no grass, no leaves, nothing. At the center stood a stone pillar, maybe 4 feet tall, covered in carvings I couldn't read, but I could read the English words someone had etched into the base. Do not disturb, do not offer, do not speak. I should have listened. Instead, I stood in that clearing as the sun set behind the mountains, and I spoke into the growing darkness. I know you can hear me, I said, my voice shaking. I'm marked. I know what that means. But I want to make a deal. I want to live. What do you want from me? The forest was silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. I waited for 5 minutes, feeling stupid, feeling desperate. Then I heard that clicking sound, coming from multiple directions at once. They were surrounding me, staying just beyond sight in the trees. Please, I said, I just want to understand the rules. A voice answered, and it wasn't human. It was my voice, my exact voice, coming from the darkness to my left. There are no rules for the marked. Then another voice, this time my mother's, from behind me. You smell like fear, like prey. A third voice, my sister's, from the right. Run home, little rabbit. Run while you still can. Laughter echoed through the trees, wet, gurgling laughter that made my skin crawl. I ran. I crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes, roots trying to trip me. Behind me, I heard them following, that wet clicking sound keeping pace. They were playing with me, I realized. They could catch me anytime they wanted. But they let me reach the edge of the forest, let me stumble out onto Millbrook Street in the fading daylight, gasping and bleeding from a dozen scratches. Mrs. Henley was in her yard and saw me emerge from the woods. Her face went pale. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh, you foolish child. What did you do?" The month passed too quickly. I tried to prepare, but how do you prepare for something that can mimic voices, unlock doors, and wants to kill you specifically? I bought every piece of silver I could afford. Coins, jewelry, old silverware. I lined my windowsills with them, placed them by every door. Walter Morrison visited me the day before the full moon. He looked older than he had at the meeting, more fragile. "I heard you went into the woods," he said, settling into my living room chair with a groan. That was stupid. I was desperate. Desperation makes people do stupid things. That's how most of us die. He pulled out a small cloth bag and handed it to me. Open it. Inside was a silver chain with a pendant, the same three-line symbol I'd seen everywhere, but inverted. That was my wife's, Walter said quietly. She was marked, like you. Survived 7 cycles before her heart gave out. Stress, the doctor said. But we all knew what really killed her. The fear, the waiting. Anyway, she wore that every full moon. Said it helped. Did it? She survived 7 cycles. Most marked people don't make it past 3. He stood with effort. Wear it. Keep your doors locked. Don't do anything brave. Brave people die first. He left me with those words of comfort. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with every light in the house on, the silver pendant cold against my chest, and listened to the clock tick toward the full moon. Before we go any further, I want to pause for a second. If you're still with me, if this story has gotten under your skin the way Ashford Ridge got under mine, do me a favor, hit that like button. Share this with someone who loves horror, because the next part is where it really went to hell. And I need to know someone else knows what happened to me. The church bell rang at 5:47 p.m. I was ready this time. Doors locked, windows covered, silver placed strategically throughout the house. I'd even wedged chairs under door handles, though I knew it wouldn't help if they really wanted in. The town went dark. The silence fell. I sat in my living room with that kitchen knife again, the pendant clutched in one hand. The footsteps started at 9, but this time, they came straight to my house. No wandering, no hunting direct and purposeful. I heard multiple sets, clicking in rhythm, a coordinated approach. The scratching started on all sides at once. Front door, back door, windows. They were testing everything simultaneously. Alex, my mother's voice at the front door. Baby, I'm cold. Please let me in. Alex, my sister's voice at the back. I drove all the way here to see you. Why won't you open the door? Alex, my own voice at the window. I'm hurt. I need help. Please. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voices multiplied. Every person I'd ever loved, every voice I'd ever trusted, calling to me from the darkness. The scratching grew more violent. Wood splintered. Glass cracked. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Complete silence. I waited, hardly breathing. A new sound. Something heavy being dragged across my roof. Slow, deliberate, moving toward the skylight. I'd reinforced it, nailed boards across it from inside the bathroom. It should hold. Should. The dragging stopped above the bathroom. I heard claws scraping at the skylight, testing it. Then, a sound like wood splitting, nails being pried loose. One by one, the boards I'd installed started falling into the bathroom with loud crashes. It was coming in. I ran to the bathroom with my knife, knowing it was useless but needing to do something. The skylight shattered, and moonlight poured through the opening. A shape blocked out the light, something massive pulling itself through the narrow window, contorting its body in ways that shouldn't be possible. It dropped into my bathroom with a wet thump. I stood in the doorway, knife raised, and got my first clear look at one of them. It was worse than I'd imagined. The body was roughly humanoid but stretched, elongated, covered in patches of matted dark fur and sections of pale, almost translucent skin. Through the skin, I could see things moving underneath muscles or maybe something else. The legs were digitigrade, ending in clawed feet. The arms were too long, hanging down to its knees, each hand tipped with curved black talons. But the face, God, the face, it was trying to be human. The skull structure was almost right, but the proportions were wrong. The jaw extended too far, filled with teeth that looked like broken glass. The nose was collapsed, just 2 slits for nostrils, and the eyes, those terrible amber eyes, held intelligence and hunger in equal measure. It looked at me, and I forgot Walter's warning. I made eye contact. The creature's mouth split wide in what might have been a smile. "Hello, Alex," it said in perfect imitation of my voice. "I've been waiting to meet you properly." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The silver pendant around my neck grew hot against my skin. The creature noticed it and hissed, steam rising where it focused its gaze. Ah, the old woman's charm. Clever, but silver only burns, it doesn't stop us. It took a step forward. I raised the knife with shaking hands. "Please," I whispered. "I don't want to die." The creature tilted its head, studying me with those horrible eyes. "Then why did you call us? In the clearing, you spoke to us. You invited conversation. I just wanted to understand. You wanted to bargain, like the others, like they all do." It took another step, now just feet away. "Do you know what happened to them? The ones who tried to make deals?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "We ate them slowly, very slowly, because bargaining implies we are equals, and we are not." It leaned closer, and I could smell it now: wet fur, decay, something sickeningly sweet underneath. "But you interest me, Alex. You came to our place. You showed courage, even if it was stupid courage. So I will offer you something rare." "What?" "A choice. You can hide until we break through, and we will break through eventually. Tonight, tomorrow night, next month. It doesn't matter. The marked always fall." Or, it paused, those terrible eyes gleaming. "You can open the door, step outside, face me directly, and we end this quickly. No more fear, no more waiting, just over." "That's not a choice. That's just different ways to die." The creature's laugh was like breaking bones. "Everything dies, Alex. The only question is how much you suffer first." It lunged. I slashed with the knife, and miraculously made contact. The blade cut across its arm, and where it touched, the flesh sizzled. The knife was silver-plated, something I'd bought specifically for this. The creature shrieked and recoiled, clutching its arm. Dark liquid that wasn't quite blood dripped onto my bathroom floor, eating through the tile like acid. I didn't wait. I ran, slamming the bathroom door behind me and wedging a chair under the handle. It wouldn't hold long, but maybe long enough. The creature threw itself against the door. Once, twice. The wood cracked. I ran downstairs, my mind racing. The basement. There was a basement I'd never explored, accessed through a door in the kitchen. If I could get down there, maybe. The bathroom door exploded upstairs. I heard the creature's claws on the hardwood, moving fast. I yanked open the basement door and practically fell down the stairs, pulling the door shut above me. There was a bolt lock on this side, old and rusty but functional. I slid it home just as something massive hit the door from above. The whole house shook, but the door held. I was trapped in the basement, in complete darkness, as the creature raged above me. I found a light switch by touch and flipped it. A single bare bulb illuminated a space I wished had stayed dark. The basement was old stone, maybe original to the house's construction, but someone had been down here, recently. The walls were covered in carvings that three-line symbol repeated hundreds of times, along with others I didn't recognize. Words in languages that hurt to look at, and drawings, crude but effective, showing the creatures in various poses of hunting and feeding. In the center of the room sat a wooden chair, its legs bolted to the floor, leather straps hung from the armrests. Dark stains covered the seat and the floor around it. Someone had been tied to that chair. Someone had bled there. On the far wall, written in what looked like dried blood, were words in English. They were here first. We are the invaders. They only want their land back. Below it, Thomas Eldridge, 1889. Forgive me, Thomas, the man whose journal I'd read. He'd lived in this house. He'd been marked. And he'd ended up here, in this chair. Had he given up? Let them take him? Or had they dragged him down here? And I didn't want to think about it. Above me, the pounding had stopped. The creature was doing something else now. I could hear it moving through the house, slow and methodical, searching every room. It knew I was down here. It was just deciding how to get to me. I explored the basement, looking for another way out. There had to be something, a storm door, a window, anything. What I found was worse. In the corner, partially hidden behind old furniture, was a tunnel. It burrowed into the earth, shored up with old timbers, descending at a steep angle. It was barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. Someone had carved words above the entrance. The only way out is through their home. God help you. Thomas's handwriting again. No, absolutely not. That tunnel led into the earth, probably connected to whatever network of caves the creatures used during the day. Going in there would be suicide, but staying here, the creature would eventually break through. It had all night. Above me, I heard wood splintering. It was tearing apart the kitchen floor, creating its own entrance to the basement. I had minutes, maybe seconds. I looked at the tunnel again, at the chair, at Thomas's final message on the wall. He'd tried to fight. He'd tried to hide. In the end, he'd died anyway. But he'd also left me a message. The only way out is through their home. What if the tunnel wasn't a trap? What if it was an escape route, something Thomas had discovered but never had the chance to use? Debris rained down from above. I saw a claw punch through the ceiling, those black talons groping for purchase. I made my decision. I grabbed the flashlight I'd brought to the basement and crawled into the tunnel. The earth was cold and damp, the smell of rot thick in the confined space. The timbers groaned as I passed beneath them, decades of soil pressing down. The tunnel descended at a sharp angle, and several times I slipped, sliding downward uncontrollably before catching myself. Behind me, I heard the creature break through into the basement. Its roar of frustration echoed down the tunnel, followed by the sound of claws on stone as it realized where I'd gone. It was following me. The tunnel narrowed further, forcing me to crawl on my belly, pushing the flashlight ahead of me. My breath came in panicked gasps. The walls pressed in from all sides. Claustrophobia hit me hard. What if the tunnel collapsed? What if it narrowed too much and I got stuck? What if? My flashlight illuminated something ahead. The tunnel opened into a larger space. I crawled faster, ignoring the scrapes on my elbows and knees, ignoring the clicking sound growing louder behind me. The creature was in the tunnel now, moving much faster than I could. I emerged into a cavern and nearly screamed. Bones. Thousands of bones. They covered the floor, piled against the walls, hanging from protrusions in the ceiling. Human bones mixed with animal bones, all picked clean, some arranged in patterns that suggested ritual or meaning. I was in their feeding ground, their den, and I wasn't alone. Eyes reflected my flashlight from every direction. Dozens of pairs, scattered throughout the cavern. The creatures were here, watching me, waiting. I stood slowly, my back against the tunnel entrance, knife in one shaking hand. There was nowhere to run, no other exits visible, just bone-covered floor and those watching eyes. Please, I said into the darkness. I didn't mean to intrude. I just want to leave. I'll go back the way I came. The clicking started multiple sources, echoing off the cavern walls. They were communicating, deciding what to do with me. Then one of them stepped into my flashlight beam. It was different from the one that had chased me. Larger, older. Its fur was silver gray, and scars covered its body. When it opened its mouth to speak, I saw that half its teeth were broken. You entered our home, it said in a voice like grinding rocks. That was foolish. I was running. I didn't know where the tunnel led. Lies taste different than truth, human. You chose this path. You sought us out in the clearing. You invited this hunt. It moved closer, and I pressed back against the tunnel wall. You want to live so desperately. Why? Your life is short, painful, full of fear. Death would be merciful, because it's mine, I said, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. Because I'm not done yet. Because I haven't. My voice broke. Because I can't give up. The creature stared at me with ancient eyes. Around the cavern, the clicking had stopped. They were all listening. The last human who entered our home, the old creature said, begged for his life, offered us anything we wanted. Do you know what we did? I shook my head. We let him go. I blinked. What? Thomas Eldridge. He found our home, just as you did. He stood where you stand, surrounded, helpless. But he did not beg. He did not offer bargains. He simply said, I understand now. This is your place, and I have violated it. Kill me if you must, but know that I mean you no disrespect. The creature's eyes gleamed. Respect. Such a small thing, yet so few humans show it. We let him leave through another tunnel. He lived 6 more years before age took him. My heart was pounding. Are you saying you'll let me go? I'm saying you have shown courage. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. The hunt is more interesting when prey fights back." It gestured with one long arm toward the far side of the cavern. "There is another tunnel. It will take you beyond the valley, beyond our territory. Take it, and the mark is removed. You will never see us again. And if I stay? In Ashford Ridge? Then the mark remains. Every full moon, we will come for you. Eventually, we will succeed. That is the price of living in our territory." I looked at that distant tunnel escape, freedom, survival. Then I thought about Walter Morrison, still alive at 93. Mrs. Henley bringing me casserole, Henry warning me at the bar, the entire town living under this curse but living nonetheless. "If I leave," I said slowly, "will you continue hunting the people in town, the ones who've lived here their whole lives?" The creature tilted its head. "Why do you care?" "Because they're my neighbors. They tried to help me." Something that might have been surprise flickered across the creature's face. "You would stay? Knowing what awaits you?" "I would stay if you removed the marks from everyone. If you stopped taking people who follow your rules. Let the town exist peacefully, and I swallowed hard. "I'll be the one you hunt. Only me. Every full moon, I'll be outside. I'll give you your chase." The cavern fell silent. Every pair of eyes was fixed on me. "You offer yourself as tribute?" the old creature asked. "I offer myself as your one target. The town stays safe. You get your hunt. Everyone wins. Except you. Except me." The creature studied me for a long moment. Then it did something I didn't expect. It laughed. Not the cruel, bone-breaking laugh from before, but something almost impressed. "Brave and stupid," it said. "The most dangerous combination. Very well, human. We accept your offer. But know this. We will not make it easy. We will not be merciful. And when we finally catch you, and you will die badly. I understand. Do you?" It leaned close, its breath hot and rank. "We have eternity. You have a handful of full moons at best. The fear will break you long before we do. You will beg for death. Maybe, but until then, the town is safe?" "The town is safe. You have our word, for whatever that means to your kind." It stepped back. "Now go. Take the tunnel. Return to your town. And when the moon waxes full again, step outside and run. We will be waiting." The creatures parted, creating a path through the bones to the far tunnel. I walked through them, my flashlight casting dancing shadows. None of them moved, but I felt their eyes tracking me with every step. At the tunnel entrance, I paused and looked back at the old creature. "What's your name? If I'm going to do this, I should at least know who's hunting me." The creature's mouth split in that terrible smile. "We have no names, but you may call me what Thomas Eldridge called me, the Grey Hunter." I nodded and entered the tunnel. The tunnel was longer than the first, but it angled upward, and after what felt like hours of crawling, I emerged into the forest on the far side of the valley, miles from town. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The most beautiful sunrise I'd ever seen. I was alive. I made my way back to Ashford Ridge on foot, arriving as the town was waking up. People stared at me bloody, covered in dirt, clothes torn, but no one seemed surprised. Walter Morrison was waiting on my porch. "You went into their den," he said. "It wasn't a question. I did, and they let you go. I made a deal." His face darkened. "What kind of deal?" I told him everything. About the Grey Hunter, about the offer, about my decision to become the town's sacrifice. When I finished, Walter was silent for a long time. Then he put his hand on my shoulder the first time he'd touched me. "You stupid brave fool," he said quietly. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I saved the town. You condemned yourself." His eyes were wet. "But yes, you saved the town. For the first time in 200 years, we won't lose anyone to the creatures. Because of you." Word spread quickly. By noon, the entire town knew. People came to my house, some to thank me, some to try to talk me out of it, some just to stare at the person who'd made a deal with monsters. Mrs. Henley brought me her husband's hunting rifle. "It won't kill them," she said, "but it might slow them down. Buy you a few seconds." Henry brought me a map of the valley with notes on the best places to run, to hide, to make a stand. "Miss, Carlyle brought me every book and document she could find about the creatures, their patterns, their weaknesses. The town rallied around me, not because they asked me to sacrifice myself, but because I'd chosen to. And I had 3 weeks until the next full moon to prepare. That was 8 months ago. 8 full moons. I've survived all of them so far, though each one has been harder than the last. The creatures hunt me with singular focus now, coordinating their efforts, learning from each attempt. I've gotten better at evading them. I know the forest now, know the caves and the hidden trails. I've cached supplies throughout the valley: water, food, weapons, silver. I plan my routes, set traps, use everything I learned from a lifetime of watching survival shows and playing video games. But they're learning too, getting faster, more strategic. The Grey Hunter himself joins the hunt now, and he's terrifyingly effective. Last month, they cornered me in a ravine. I only escaped by diving into an ice-cold stream and letting it carry me downstream while they searched the banks. I had hypothermia by the time I crawled out. 2 months ago, one of them, a young male, fast and reckless, almost caught me. Its claws raked across my back as I dove through a window of the abandoned mill. I still have the scars. I don't sleep well anymore. Even on nights when the moon is dark and I'm safe, I wake up sweating, hearing that clicking sound in my dreams. But the town is safe. Walter told me they've gone 3 full moons without a single disappearance, the first time since 1823. Children play outside later now. People don't board up their windows as early. There's hope in Ashford Ridge for the first time in generations. And that's worth something. I don't know how many more full moons I have left. The Grey Hunter told me I would beg for death eventually. And some nights, when I'm running through the dark forest with monsters at my heels, I think he might be right. But not yet. Not tonight. The full moon rises in 3 hours. I'm gearing up now, my pack loaded with supplies, silver knife on my belt, the pendant Walter's wife gave me around my neck. The town will lock their doors soon. The church bell will ring, and I'll step outside into the darkness, ready to run. Because that's the deal. That's the price. And somehow, impossibly, I'm still alive to pay it. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the creatures actually want to catch me, or if they enjoy the hunt too much to end it quickly. Maybe that's their mercy, not killing me fast, but letting me live a little longer, letting me feel like I have a chance. Or maybe I'm just lucky. Either way, I'm still here, still running, still surviving. And if you're ever driving through the Appalachian foothills and you find a small town called Ashford Ridge, stop and visit. The people are kind. The town is safe. The rent is cheap. Just remember, when the full moon comes, stay inside. Lock your doors, close your curtains, and if you hear something scratching at your window, something calling your name in a familiar voice, don't answer. Trust me on that one.